right, so I mentioned a little bit a few minutes ago that I have lots of work going on in the house today, but hopefully we can have a quiet hour, and the work is outside, but it is why I'm in a different room today. Try to stay out of people's way. We're going to start seated. So take a little bit of time to place yourself in your chair so that you're using your own effort to sit upright. You're not leaning on the back of the chair, and really kind of try to balance your weight over your sitting bones, more specifically the center points of your sitting bones. So we do tend to kind of sit on the farther back end of those sitting bones. So usually the adjustment is to shift your weight forward, put your shoulders above your hips, slide your hands closer to your torso so that you have your shoulders sitting back. And then make sure your head is also right above your spine. We tend to kind of drag ourselves around with our faces forward. So putting your head in position above the spine. Make sure your feet are planted in line with your knees. And then once you have all of that, you can close your eyes and look down, giving your brain a signal that it can become less active, and starting to tune in to how you feel. Tune into sensation in your body. You can check in with the busyness of the mind. You might notice your mind flitting about as it likes to do. Notice your breathing. You don't have to change it in any way, just simply pay attention. You can also notice the state of the abdomen. In general, as a culture, we tend to constrict the abdomen. So if you sense you're doing that unnecessarily, just see if you can relax the space of the abdomen. You might notice as a result, your breath begins to deepen. We also carry a lot of emotional tension in the abdomen. So if you've had an emotional time going on, you might notice more tension in the abdomen. And finally, while we're here, maybe setting the tone for this practice. Sometimes we work with intention setting. So if there's something calling to you that you'd like to kind of bring into this practice, maybe it's a word, it could be a phrase, could be some sort of goal or resolve that you have for yourself. It might even be an image, something that might give your practice today a little bit more context. And if nothing is there, that's fine too, just leaving the heart space open so that something might show up and come into your heart. So we'll join our hands together in front of the heart, and on an exhalation, bowing toward your heart. And releasing your hands, lifting your head, and allowing your eyes to come open. I think I forgot to bring my singing bowl, so we'll pretend I just rang the bell. We're starting class. So we're going to take a moment to just warm up our bodies from seated, and we're going to dolphin dive right away, which is the undulation of the spine that allows us to flex the spine and extend the spine. And because we want to allow the torso to pass as low as it can, you want to widen your knees. You can leave your hands comfortably placed on your thighs somewhere. And we're going to start by undulating down with the forward bending. So you're going to tuck the chin, bring the navel toward the spine, and make one curve out of your back. So you're rounding your spine here. Bring it down nice and low, like your head is going to be the lowest point. And then when you get to that low point, look forward to initiate the arch in the back and come up with your chest leading. So your back is concave. So undulate through, up at the top, you're going to dip the chin in, bring the navel back, take the head down nice and low. This is on the exhalation. And then from your low point, look forward, starting to bring the back into extension, into back bending, come into neutral, and again, you're back in forward bending. So we'll do a couple more like this. You're always going to be exhaling as you lower, and you're always going to be inhaling as you rise, regardless of what the spine is doing. As we Move down toward the floor. The belly compresses, which is naturally a good time to exhale. And as we come up, the diaphragm opens, which is a great time to breathe in. Let's do one more like this. And the goal here is really smoothness and steadiness. It's not range of motion, it's not speed. So just be very interested in your smoothness. When you come to the top, we'll pause there and we're gonna come down now with the back bending. So you're gonna lead with the chest. Let your chest become the forwardmost point. Bring your sternum as close to the floor as it will go. And then that's going to be your transition point. Once your sternum is as low as it goes, then begin to pull the navel in and tuck the chin and lead with the mid back. And your head will come up last. Still exhaling as you dip low and still inhaling as you rise. You'll have to engage those stomach muscles to bring you back up so that you're coming up with support for the spine and the back. And try to really coordinate the movement with the breathing. So stay down as long as you're still exhaling. And when you initiate the inhale, then begin to come back up. And the next time you come up, you can stay there. Good work. So you can step your feet back in line with your knees. We're going to bring the spine into crescent position. So this is the lateral sideways movement of the spine. So grabbing your chair with your left hand, raise the right arm. Notice the balanced weight of your sitting bones and try to maintain that. We're going to inhale, extending fully up through that right arm, through the fingers. Exhale, lengthen to the left. And right away, keep some weight into the right sitting bone. So if it became lighter, bring some weight back there. Try to find more balance. And see if you can imagine your spine here. In yoga, we use our imaginations quite a bit. And this act of imagining ourselves when we can't see ourselves is a big component of good balance. So it's propriocepting that we're doing right now, thinking about our spine when we can't see it. And this proprioception skill sharpens when we practice these things, and then it helps our balance. On the in-breath, you're going to lift yourself up, and exhale, bring your right hand down to the chair for support, and then raise the left arm. And take an inhale and just really extend up through the fingertips. Exhale, lengthening to the right, observing those sitting bones, trying to keep the weight as balanced as you can, bringing a nice length to the left side body, but also paying attention that the right side body is not being collapsed. And then on an in-breath, bring yourself up and out of it. Exhale the arm down. So lastly, twisting action, the last two actions of the spine. So you can pivot or swivel on your chair. So your knees are pointing to the right. And then we're going to raise that left arm. Got to think about my directions to you guys as I teach oppositely. And on an exhale, you're going to turn to the back of the chair and grab hold with both hands, but one hand will be pushing, the other will be pulling. And remember, when we twist, we want to kind of corset the lower abdominals so that we keep our pelvis stabilized, and we try to bring rotation to the spine, not so much the pelvis, and especially the armpit chest area of the spine. So if you follow the armpit line around the chest line and the dorsal spine line, it's all that band around the sternum that we really try to tap into. This area is very potent with energy. It also gets pretty congested. So for two good reasons, it's important to pay attention kind of to that armpit line. And make sure to move your head so you're looking fully over your right shoulder. So twisting is a really excellent way to detox your body. So is exhaling. So just spend 3 exhales really wringing the breath out and really taking that twist to a little bit of a deeper space. And on an in-breath, lifting through the top of your head to kind of maintain length along the spine. Bring yourself out of it, and you can swivel 180 degrees on your chair seat so that your knees are pointing off to the left now. We'll raise the right arm, and on an exhale, turning to the back of the chair, using your hands, one pushes, one pulls, to help you align the chest to face the back of the chair, shoulders aligning, gently gripping those lower abdominals. One way to think about that action, if you're not kind of tapping into it, is think about you're squeezing your hip bones toward each other. And just take the next 3 exhales, leaning into your exhalations, taking them a bit farther than you might if you weren't thinking about them. One way we kind of keep ourselves anxious is we don't allow the full exhalations to flow out of us. So finishing up here on an exhale, and then inhale, lightly lengthen out of the twist, lift, lift, lift through the top of your head, and spin back around on your chair seat so that we can come to standing. I have almost a full body here. I think that's good enough. I always like to make sure I have a head in your camera. So we're going to do our standing downward facing dog. So you can put the chair seat in front of you and grab the edges and begin to walk yourself back. So the chair version, again, we've done this many times, but to keep the legs upright and the torso angled, and you're kind of maxing out those 2 things. So the legs are walking as far back as they can, remaining upright, and you're going to really draw the hips away from the wrists. And just begin to breathe into it. Once you have that first edge, you're going to just begin to breathe into it. Nice deep breaths. Good. The legs might not want to go straight yet, but work toward a straighter leg as they begin to elongate. Lean into your edge. So our edge is that physical space where we're not overwhelmed, we're not underwhelmed. And the edge is a moving target. We can't just show up there and be, okay, we're at our edge, and then go into what I call screensaver mode. You have to stay attentive and alert because your edge will keep changing the longer you hold and breathe. So track with your edge. Deepen the pose as you start to open. Wonderful. So you're going to start to walk in closer to the chair, and we're going to take standing forward bend now, which is similar but different. So your feet are aligning as wide as your chair legs. Hopefully it's standard spacing that you have. Otherwise, it's about hip distance. And then you're going to put your arms down on the chair. If that's not a comfortable position, you might add a block or something under your arms. And you're going to let your head hang freely. And again, the idea is the legs remain upright. The legs are also at their straightest and they're firm. So that means you're actively gripping your quadriceps. You're imagining your kneecaps moving inward and upward. And how do you do that? That's by engaging your quadriceps, squeezing your quads. The backs of the knees are as open as they can be. You're tipping your pelvis forward. Your head is suspended or supported. And in forward bends, the brain gets very quiet. So you might imagine your brain just kind of suspended inside the skull. And now as you're ready, you're going to begin to come out by just lifting your head, bringing your hands onto your chair. Come up slowly, and again, make sure you're using your stomach muscles so that you give your back support. And the chair we're going to have off to the right side, so you can put the chair seat facing the right side. So once you have that, just bringing yourself into standing mountain pose, which I consider a great way to recalibrate once you're upright, kind of like when we sit and quietly center ourselves. This is the standing version of that. So you can have hip distance spacing with your feet. You can have feet together or anywhere in between. What you want to look at is your second toes line up with your heels. Okay, so that's good alignment. Lift and spread the toes. You're going to bring them from the floor, lift them and spread them. So we're trying to get as much width across the toe bases as we can. Large feet are good yoga feet. So sometimes you see yoga teachers whose feet are really broad, and that's because they practice this kind of spacing. Lengthen the heels back as well. And then lastly, you're just going to kind of place your weight over your feet so it feels really balanced. You might want to kind of sway back and forth until you can kind of sense that you're centered up over the arches of the feet. Your shoulders in line with your hips. The thumbs, if you press them against your sides, should meet the center of the outer hips if you're in good alignment. Your legs are firm. So that's, again, squeezing the quadriceps, lifting and engaging the kneecaps. Lengthen all the way up through the top of your head, but drop the shoulders. You may or may not close your eyes. It's up to you. If you can balance that way, if you can stay present. Relax your jaw. Make sure your skull is perfectly in alignment with the central axis of the spine. So sometimes I imagine the spine moves up through the core of the skull, and sometimes that helps me align my head. So sometimes I imagine here a pine tree, and I think about the through line that starts at the pelvic floor and leads through the crown of the head, like the tree trunk. And everything attached to the through line, to the periphery of that tree trunk, is softly descending toward the floor. And I try to hold these two kind of oppositional ideas at once, which is a big piece of yoga. We have unions of opposites. Yoga means union. So if you can sense the upward energy of the central axis and also sense the weight of those peripheral parts of your body, you're perfecting the balance and you're perfecting the pose. Good. And relaxing those efforts, let your eyes open. And just kick out your legs, make sure you're feeling refreshed and free. Because that is an effortful pose, the legs remain in constant effort in that Tadasana mountain pose. So we're going to be working to triangle pose now to the right side. So the chair seat is there. The right foot is going to step underneath the chair, and the left foot's going to step back. So you're having, ideally, one of your own legs of space between your feet. Now, I know for a lot of people that is something you have to work toward eventually, but that's, for future reference, the alignment. We want to have an equilateral triangle with the legs in the floor. Okay, so left toes are going to turn in, right toes are fully turning out to the right. You have to turn your torso back to this front middle space because it wants to follow that right leg. So we're turning the torso right to left. Firm your legs, squeeze those quadriceps. Good. Take the arms up, take the arms open, and revolve only from the elbows to the fingertips. Try to keep the upper arms active. So our arms are dynamic. One upper arm spirals one way, lower arm spirals the other way. Inhale big. Exhale, lengthen to the right and try to land your hand on your chair. And you might need to add height under your hand because we all have different chairs, we all have different bodies. So if it's a really far reach for you to hit that chair, add a block, add a book, whatever you've got, a soup can. Once you're stabilized, the arm should be in alignment with the shoulders. You should have a vertical arm. You're going to help roll that left hip back and roll the right hip forward because the hips want to turn and kind of slant toward the floor. So we're trying to peel those hips away from floor facing to side facing. We're attempting to align the shoulders in a stacked way as well. And you guys all look good from my end, but one thing to always be aware of is that we don't just drop off at the neck. Keep your head, the crown of the head matching the tailbone. I like to say connect the dots, tailbone to crown. And then lastly, if it's available to you today, stack the top arm. Good. We're going to stay for 5 breaths. That left hip is a little confused if it's moving up or moving down. It's moving down. So really encourage that by stepping into your outer left foot. And once you direct that hip down, you're going to feel more space open in the body. Oftentimes the body isn't sure which direction you want it to go. And once you tell it, You can relieve cramping, you can relieve pain, and you can strengthen the experience of the pose. Okay, on the in-breath, you're gonna pull yourself up and out of it. Lift through the top arm, lift through the crown of the head. Use that inhale, come up, 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 up. And then you can turn your feet forward and release the arms. Feel free to step the feet together, and we'll move the chair to the left so we can do left-sided triangle pose. So just gonna mention this now, you might eventually start to graduate from this height to lower, in which case we start to work with a yoga block. So if you have a yoga block, that might be where you eventually start to take your hand. So feel free to, I never want you to limit yourself. If you're ready to go deeper, you should always know where the next depth is. And you don't have to use a yoga block. You can use, again, the soup can idea. Just make sure it's sturdy. Okay, so we have the left foot under the chair. Left heel aligns with arch of right foot. Left toes are 90 degrees. Right toes are about 15 to 45 degrees. Turn your torso back to that middle space. Firm your legs. Make sure they're tight and straight. Straight leg, Dominga. Unless I'm seeing something wrong there. There you go. Raise the arms and open the arms. And feel the upper arm. We want to try to keep that spinning, that rotation. Only move from elbows to fingertips, so you have dynamic arms. Big inhale, and exhale, lengthen to the left. Trying to get the left side of your body really long. Left hand down to whatever you're propping it with. Right hand to your hip. Okay, we'll add the arm later once we get everything else kind of refined. So you're gonna roll your left buttock toward the camera, roll your right hip back, attempting to get those hips really facing out into the middle space. And then once you sense you have shoulder above shoulder alignment, that's a great time to check in with that arm stacking. If you take the arm up and the pose kind of feels weakened, take it back to the hip. If you take it up and the pose feels strengthened, then it's good to keep it up. And just imagine proprioception, tailbone to the crown of the head. Connect the dots in your mind. Try to see that line from the tailbone all the way to the crown. Imagine it. You're going to use an in-breath, so anchor into your right heel. Use your top arm. Use the crown of the head. Pull up on the in-breath, turning left toes forward. You can release the arms and join the feet for mountain pose. So if your mountain pose doesn't have feet completely joined, you know what to do. You can go up to hip width for that stability. Put yourself against an imaginary wall, even the head, especially the head, which tends to float forward. Don't tilt the chin up or down, neutral chin. And once we repeat this pose over the course of a practice, it starts to spontaneously align itself because the body has memory. Gently tilt the pelvis back, gently move the soft tissue of the buttocks toward the front body, gently move the soft tissue of the front thighs toward the back body. Feel that pine tree union of opposites, upward moving energy in the middle, soft descent of the limbs toward the floor. Good. Blinking the eyes open. And we're going to take the chair in front of us now for warrior two. So we're going to work with the higher part of the chair, the back of the chair, just to give the hands some stability. And we can keep it there for both sides, right and left. So once you have it there, feel free to step back to your wide stance. It's the very same setup with the legs. So the same right toes turning out, left toes turning in, same spacing between the legs, except warrior two, we have a bent knee on top of the ankle. So what you might notice when you bend your knee is that your knee goes beyond your ankle. And that's a good sign to bring more space between the feet. You might also notice the knee wants to track inside the big toe. That's a weak kind of habit in the knee. So just take a few exhales, bending and straightening. So you're going to bend on the exhale and try to track that knee with your second toe. Inhale to straighten. Just do it a few times. You're going to keep your eyes on that knee as it bends and straightens. You're going to keep trying to track it with the second toe, which is probably going to require a little bit of steering that knee to the left. Is that right? I'm teaching backwards. So toward the small toe is what I should say. Keep trying to face your chest, even though you're looking to the right, keep your chest facing the middle space. Okay, so we kind of have an idea of how we want that knee to move. So the next time you exhale, keep it aligning with second toe. Your torso remains vertical here. Sometimes we see torsos tilting sideways. Your torso remains upright here. Your chest, your shoulders, your hips are all squared up to this middle space. Stretch the arms out across the floor. You could keep your hand on your chair if you need a little more support. Look over your right fingertips, but you're revolving your torso from right to left. It's very tempting to let it revolve the other way because that torso wants to face whatever your eyes are facing. So we're playing with different things going on in the body at the same time. Holding opposition in the brain, once again, is such a healthy thing for the brain to do. Keep turning the torso right to left. Keep your gaze softly over the right fingers. And then go ahead and push into that right foot to straighten the leg. And you can just turn the feet in the other direction. So left toes are going to turn out, right toes turn in. Use your fingertips on the chair. Try to turn yourself to square up with this broad side of the mat. And again, a few exhales to bend, inhales to straighten, observing the path your knee takes. We notice you might do a few without trying to control it to see what the natural course is. For most of us, it's dipping in and going back out. So we're trying to really keep the knee tracking with second toe for that whole movement pattern. So we'll assume that we all have kind of an idea and that we've corrected some of those bad habits, and you're going to land on the next exhalation with the knee above the ankle, probably gently pressurizing it toward the small toe. Return your torso to square up with the chair, and then you can free one or both arms across the floor and look over the left fingers. Gently moving the flesh of the trunk from left to right. Imagine someone's firmly holding your right wrist. They're not letting it go. And you're extending through those left fingertips away from that firm hold. And go ahead and push into the floor to straighten left leg. Use your chair for support. Turn the toes back and bring the feet back together. Okay, so just taking mountain pose, you don't have to hold the chair unless you need it. Put yourself back in mountain pose, close the eyes or lower the gaze. And whatever the breath is doing, try to become big enough that the breath is not being quieted, it's not being suppressed or made to be smaller. So be a big enough container for your breath. Good. You can open the eyes. We have two mountain legs here. We're going to come into tree pose. Try to keep the actions of your legs going even though we only have one standing leg for these poses. So we're going to start with the right knee bending, prop the right heel against the left, inner ankle, inner shin, and then treat that left leg like your mountain leg. So it's a firm leg, the kneecap is engaged. That means if you were to grab your left kneecap, it would not move around, it's stabilized. We know right away we tend to push out into our standing leg hip. So I want you to draw the outer left hip bone to midline, and you might even feel the inner thigh moving in to kind of complete the line of the spine right down to the floor. That's what we're going for. Try to steer the right knee not only to the right, but gently take it back, which will help you roll the right buttock forward. And then you may stay here, or you may step the foot onto the calf muscle. Some of you might even go above the knee onto the inner thigh. And then you might play with both hands remaining on the chair to steady yourself. You might take one hand to the heart center, keep the other on the chair. You might take both hands to the heart center. And if you're able to, pick something straight ahead of you Pick an object, maybe it's a little dot on the wall or something, and use it to help you steady yourself. So you're kind of attaching an anchor point through the line of your vision, but then also put your attention back inside yourself, not outside yourself. So that object is there to give you steadiness, but keep attention really internal, inward. And then you're going to slowly deconstruct those steps back. So hands return to the chair, step your right foot down, give your left foot or leg a shake. And then we'll set up for the other side, which might be different because oftentimes the body has imbalance with left and right. So don't expect the same outcome. Firmly kind of place your right leg, prop your left heel. Try to draw right hip bone in toward midline. Magnetize left knee, not only sideways, but slightly back. Good. Maybe one hand to the chest, maybe both, maybe neither. Picking that gaze right ahead of you. I forgot to mention, if you can step up the leg, you can do that too. The movement will never cease. What we can get better at is responding to the movement. And then begin to come back to the hand support, lower the foot back to the floor, give your right leg a good shake. And we're going to go back to our forward bend with the chair because the legs do get tight with standing, one-legged standing balancing poses. So we want to relieve that. So this is, again, where the legs are closer to the chair. They're hip distance apart. And you can rest the arms or come as low as you can. Let the head dangle. Try to balance your feet. If your weight is balanced over your feet, you can trust that your hips are above your ankles. So we don't use mirrors in yoga. We sense our alignment. And one way we can know that we have hip above heel is that the feet are balanced. You'll see if you put all your weight in your heels, your hips go back. You put all your weight in your toes, your hips go forward. So balanced feet, we can trust we're in alignment. Just staying for 5 thorough exhalations. Really touching down to the bottom of the breath. When you're ready to take your next in-breath, use that to help you gently come up. Good. So warrior one, we'll keep the chair to the right, but we'll be working with the higher part of the chair. And we can keep our chair here for both sides. So once you have the higher part of the chair in front of you, you're going to step your right foot under the chair, your left foot back. And we want our feet to be hip width. That means your right foot's closer to the right edge of the mat, the left foot's closer to the left edge of the mat. Left toes should be slightly turned out. Right toes are pointing straight on. Use your fingertips to the chair to help you turn your hips because you can sense, because our legs are asymmetrical, you'll sense your right hip wants to float forward and your left hip drags back. So we have to correct that. Bring your left hip forward, right hip back. Imagine there's headlights on your hips. They're evenly shining forward. We're going to keep the legs straight for the beginning here. So firm, straight legs. Tighten up those legs. They're as straight as they can be. We have to move the chair a little bit forward now because we need to free space for the knee to bend. So on an exhale, you're going to bend your knee and it's going to be above the ankle. What you'll notice is that, and I don't see it actually on a lot of you, so good job, but sometimes the torso tilts forward. So you really want to kind of move the tailbone into the front body. Think about the pelvis tilting back. You can keep both hands on the chair, or you might raise the left arm and bring it alongside the ear. You're gonna bend that right knee one day, someday to 90 degrees, and fully as you can, extend your left leg. Don't have a quasi straight leg. It's as straight as you can make it. On an inhale, lift through the top arm and straighten that right leg. You can lower your hand down if you did take it up, and you're gonna shift your feet to swap out. Left is under the chair, right is behind you. With both hands down, just take a moment of support from the chair to align the hips so they're square, they're level. Shoulders also. Fully straighten the back leg. Exhale, bend the left knee. Tilt the pelvis back so your torso is not pitching forward over the floor. Think about a book on your head, paperback, book on your head. And now feeling, sensing the right heel is the starting point for this beautiful crescent shape. Swing your right arm up alongside the ear, continuing that crescent shape. You might even shift your gaze slightly up. Soften your eyes, like imagine they're resting on little pillows in the back of your head. Keep your back leg as straight as you can and continue to press that right heel down. These look great. You guys look great. Make sure you're breathing. Inhale, lift through your top arm, straighten that front leg, use the chair for support, and bring your feet together. You can just keep facing the chair as you are and set up your mountain pose and releasing the chair if and when you're ready, closing the eyes. So hopefully by now in mountain pose, you're starting to notice a little bit of steadiness has come into the body. Maybe more spontaneous arrival to alignment, not so much direction is required. Maybe the feet are less clingy, they're more soft and broad and balanced. Wonderful. Let your eyes blink open. Feel free to shake out the limbs if you need a little bit of a refresh. And we're going to keep facing this chair for Warrior 3, doing all our warriors today. So you're going to be really close to the chair. Fingertips are right there, and you're probably less than an inch away from the chair. We're going to take our left big toe straight back, but keep it on the floor. Take your left big toe straight back, but keep it on the floor. And again, you'll notice the hips want to swivel because anytime we put the legs in asymmetrical position, the hips follow. Everything's connected, right? So return your hip points to level. Inhale here. And on an exhale, you're going to start to tilt the torso forward and raise the leg. You can bring hands down to the chair seat if you get that far. And the idea here is not to be the dog whizzing on the fire hydrant. The idea is to have your level lower back, like a teacup could rest on your sacrum. Keep both legs straight. And it's really tempting to turn those left toes out sideways. Try to keep your left toes pointing to the floor. How do we do that? You lift your inner thigh up. Lift your inner thigh up on the left leg. Good. Now, inhale is always supportive to help us get out of poses. So taking an inhale, crawling back up the chair if you came down. You'll bring your foot back into position underneath you, and you might give your legs a shake. So one day this is a hands-free pose, and we're teaching ourselves how to return equity to the body when we have one standing heavy leg and when we have one floating light aerial leg. So keeping the left foot down, step your right big toe back and straighten both legs. Look forward, inhale. And on an exhale, extending, which means lengthening forward, raising the leg as the torso lowers. They work like a seesaw. Maybe the hands move to a lower position, maybe they don't. And spend the rest of the pose just really trying to create equity in the legs, lifting and creating more lightness in your heavy leg, creating a little bit of false weight in your floating aerial right leg. And then on an in-breath, use your stomach muscles. Remember, the back needs support to get out of things. Use the stomach muscles. Touch down with the right toe and then step your foot back under you. Good. Again, right where you are, dropping into mountain pose. Let the shoulders descend. Let your breath be free. Again, try not to limit the breath. Wonderful. Okay. So let's see. We're going to do side angle pose, but we're going to do it seated. And if you have a block, you might want to use it. If you don't have a block, you can substitute, like we talked about, other things. Anything that's sturdy and has the height that, this is I think it's a 6-inch, but you can put it off to the right. So we've done this a few times, but this is kind of where we want to rest the right buttock on the chair. For some of us, the left leg has to be more passive, either because of the chair or limitations in your body. Otherwise, you're going to really try to extend that leg. But I understand that's not available to all of us. So that being said, if you find that this extended leg isn't coming today, just have a soft kind of out of the way, kind of complacent left leg, because we're going to focus more on other parts of this pose today. Okay, so the right knee should be over the ankle. We have nice support happening underneath this thigh, so we can feel nice depth with this knee bend. One day we'll try to create it without the chair. And then if you are fully straightening left leg, try to run that line, that visual line from your heel to your arch. That's good alignment. Okay, and then a slight turn in with the left toes. So the block is not a must. It's only if you have a lot of depth today. If you don't find a lot of depth, you're going to be resting your arm on your thigh. And if you do have more depth available, you're going to be propping your hand to your block, which is going to be sitting kind of right outside your right ankle. So again, we have that vertical pillar of an arm. If you're resting on your forearm, the elbow is under the shoulder. If you're using the block, your hand is in line with the shoulder. Okay, left hand to the left hip. Remember how that knee likes to track in, it likes to cave in. It's probably trying to move toward the inner toe, big toe. Press it into your arm. And if you're not doing that version, press it toward the small toe side. Good. Our torso is definitely angled here. That's part of the pose. This is called side angle pose. The finishing piece, cherry on top, is to run the left arm alongside the ear, the biceps aligning with the ear, the palm facing the floor. And if you were ever a ballet student, we don't do ballet arms in yoga because they're confusing to the body. We do straight limbs usually, unless we're on purpose doing bent limbs. So it's a clean direction of energy here. Straighten out the elbow joint if you have the arm in play. Squeezing your knee back, rolling that right buttock forward. These look like beautiful poses. Just for fun, people always get triggered when I say fun. We're going to inhale to a warrior two, a seated version. So we were here once today. Look over your right fingers and just enjoy this second version of this pose where you have so much support in the foundation of the pose that you can really free up a lot of levity, lightness, energy in the upper body. Wonderful. Go ahead and soften those arms down. You can bring your legs in front of you, and between sides here, we're going to do a seated child's pose. If you have the potential to pass through the space of the legs, you can do child's pose with your knees wide to allow for that. If you don't think you're going to get that far, it's better to keep the legs together because then you have the pressure of your legs and probably your arms too, to really push the breath into the back body and to give you the rest and digest signal to the nervous system. So you choose. If you're able to connect your chest and thighs directly, you might just dangle the arms. And make sure the head is as free as it can be. The neck does always try to kind of hold that head. Just let the neck be off duty. And on an in-breath, you can just gently come up. Beautiful. So we'll set up second side of side angle pose. If you're going to use the block, you can place it to the left. Now we're going to primarily be supporting the left buttock and thigh. And the right leg is either passively kind of lunging there or it's fully extended. If it's fully extended, you are going to try to keep the full right foot down on the floor. So you're kind of actively bringing the outer foot to the floor. And again, make sure you're lining up heel and arch so you have that good alignment. So you're either going to rest the forearm for a more modified version, or you'll drop the hand down to your block and run that wrist in alignment with the shoulder. So you have a pillar for an arm. There's a reason that pillars are vertical. They're stronger that way. So magnetize your knee toward the small toe side. Roll the top shoulder back, the right shoulder back. And just when you sense it's time, that cherry on top is going to be that additional arm, which kind of completes this long slashing line of energy to the right side body. Magnetize your right ear to your arm. Don't let your head droop. And you can keep rolling your trunk out of the shadows, away from the floor, turning the chest toward the ceiling. You might invite the eyes up as well. The eyes are very suggestive, so that might raise the energy of the spine a little bit if you turn the eyes up. And just try to bring full awareness to the entire inner body here, everything orchestrating to this one pose. Stabilize through the lower half, and on an in-breath, you're going to sweep into Warrior Two. Gaze over the left fingers. Just give your eyes roots to the back of the head. Don't let your eyes pop out of your skull. Soften your jaw. And even though you're looking at one thing, your awareness should be very full circumference of the body. Good. And release the arms. Adjust your feet back in front of you so you can take a resting child's pose. Either version, knees close together or the wide position so the torso can pass lower than the thigh level. And whatever you're doing, the head should be really suspended. The brain floating inside the skull. Now gently start to come up. And you want to wait out any dizziness because we are going to stand up to do a wide-legged standing forward fold. So just make sure you've resolved any dizziness from coming up from that child's pose, and then you can come up. And we're going to use the seat of the chair for support. So ideally, if you had a wall right behind you, that provides awesome support for this pose, but most of us don't. And so you definitely want to make sure your feet have traction, which is why we want sticky mats, yoga mats. We don't want our feet sliding. And we're going to be trying to take the head down to the chair seat, and you can incorporate your arms or any number of props so that you can get your head resting at the level you need. But what we want to do first is take care of the legs. The legs remain strong and active. So toes should be right in front of your heels, pointing forward. Make sure you didn't collapse or bulldoze your pinky toe, which can happen. We press out. So draw some weight to your big toe ball mounds and suck the outer ankle bones in. And if you don't know how to do that, imagine it. Imagine you're sucking the outer ankle bones in. It's going to help bring a little more stability across the feet. Feet are balanced front to back so that we know where our hips are in line with our ankles as far as that plane. And now bring yourself forward and prop your head somehow, or you can suspend your head, whatever is passive and comfortable. The legs should be the thing that remains quite active. Make sure now that you're down, your legs are still in alignment, your feet are balanced to tell you so. And we know those knees like to turn in, they like to look at each other here, so you're gently directing the flesh of your thighs, which will help move the knees to moving your inner thighs towards your outer thighs. So that the knees are looking out at the toes rather than at each other. We're going to try to stay 5 breaths. Lean into those exhalations, draining those breaths from your body. Begin to lift the head. Bring more weight into your hands. Bring the feet back together. And we'll come back to seated. So before we conclude and kind of finish off with that final resting pose, we're just going to do a little bit of abdominal strengthening. So these are the boat poses. We'll do it single legs. So we want to really have that starting position where your feet are just underneath your knees, your heels are lined up with your knees, your shins are vertical. We're going to just kind of scoop up underneath the right thigh. And you can drop the weight of the thigh into your hands. Attempt to keep your shoulders in line with your hips. So both poses, I want you to think more about a V shape and less about a letter U. So we want to have a sharp kind of apex at the sitting bones, and the lower back should remain concave or flat. So we don't want to round the lower back. Your torso is angling back. You're going to breathe that thigh closer to your chest. And then at that thigh level that you've reached now, begin to extend your leg. And then just try to back off with the help from the hands. So just give a little bit less support. So you're using your abdominals rather than your hands to support the weight of the leg. It's not necessary that you completely let go. Try to shift your gaze up. Ideally, the angle of the leg and torso match in the boat pose. We don't want to have our torso all the way back and our leg all the way up, and we don't want to have our leg all the way down and our torso all the way up. So letter V is what we think about now, not letter U. Good. Let's start to bend and step down. You might rest on your thighs for a moment, take a few breaths, recover. I like to say I love abdominal work, ... when it's over. Okay. So scooping underneath left thigh. Draw the leg up and just kind of use the hands like a hammock at first, just dropping the weight into the hands as you elevate the thigh. You're trying to essentially close the gap between your chest and thigh. And then keeping that, now start to play with extending the leg. It does not have to go completely straight. Ideally, the big toe becomes a focal point, but sometimes your big toe isn't as high as we need. So if it's not kind of up towards the corner of the room where the wall meets the ceiling, then look up to that corner. And then just begin to back off with help from the hands and start to grip those stomach muscles. Remember, kind of pulling the hip bones together. A tense jaw will not help this pose. A hardening face will not help this pose. Eyes bugging out of your head will not help this pose. So soften all of those things. And now begin to bring the leg down, sit forward. Take a few moments recovering. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of see if this works for people. If you can sit back on your butt and kind of sandwich your hands between your thighs and your calf muscles. So this would be how we kind of start to play with getting into full boat. So if that's not happening today, feel free to go back to single leg version. If you're here, you're kind of balanced over your sitting bones. You'll just begin to extend the legs, lighten up the help from the hands a little bit. It's more challenging now, so you're not going to stay as long. And now go back and touch down with your feet. So because we did 2 legs up, we're going to do it one more time so that those of you that did single legs can do the other leg. All right, so last boat pose here. So if you're doing single leg, you'll do the other leg. Otherwise, you're going to repeat this full boat. Tuck those hands to the backs of the knees. Close the gapping between the chest and the thighs. Look up to that corner, ceiling meeting wall. Begin to extend the legs. And then use the stomach rather than the hands. Try to be more about the stomach muscles than the hands. And you can bring it down. We don't want to leave with, super tight abs. I mean, yes, we do, but we don't want them shortened. We want them tight, but we don't want them short. And so you're going to sit back in your chair, straighten out your legs, take your hands, interlock them behind your head. Press the elbow tips back and really rest your weight, your head weight in your hands. Push your head into your hands. Your eyes should definitely be toward the ceiling at this point. And as you elongate the abdominals, maybe exaggerate that a little bit with filling up the belly like a balloon as you breathe in, just to encourage a returning length. We all know what that fishing pole looks like with the line pulled too tight. So then we get distorted. We don't want our back super long and our front super short. So we want front body and back body equalized. Okay, and then begin to come out of that. And we'll spend the last few moments just sitting in silence, just kind of being with the effects of your practice. So that's very important. Just as it's important to start quietly, we want to close and just kind of sense how this lands for us. We want an afterglow, not an aftermath. So put yourself back in that starting position, but this time you're using the support of the chair. You're going to sit back with that chair support. Your head is right over your spine. Your hands are closed so that your shoulders sit back. Close your eyes. And then the rest is to become as passive as you can. So sitting in a chair, we have to remain somewhat active, but just kind of dial down any unnecessary effort now. Softening your face, your jaw, your tongue, your shoulders. Watching your breath come and go. Notice any energy throughout the body. Notice if the mind feels a bit more still than when you began. Let's join our hands together in front of the heart. Take a big breath in through the nose. And on an exhale, let it go. Bowing toward your own heart. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. All right. Thank you all for joining me today. Send me an email if you want any recordings ever, and I'll hope to see you next time. Thank you.